So I've been really thinking about a topic, honestly, since January, because it just takes me a long time to prepare and just to think and really just to trust in God and what He's given me, and so to speak about. And so I kind of got my message from a pastor, and I heard a sermon and over on Luke chapter 10, if you want to follow along. If not, I'm just going to read it. In verses 38 and through 42. And it's talking about Jesus when He visited Mary and Martha. And you might be familiar with this, you might not be familiar with this, but the way He preached it, I just kind of would read this and I would just read it and be like, okay, Jesus went to their house. And I just didn't think twice about it, but I really liked how He broke it down, and so I kind of used his along with my own kind of spin on it. So I'm going to start in verse 38. As they went, He entered a village, and a woman named Martha welcomed Him into her house. She had a sister called Mary, who also sat at Jesus' feet and listened to His teachings. But Martha was distracted with much serving, and she came to Him and said, "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Then tell her to help me." Jesus answered her, "Martha, Martha, you are anxious and troubled about many things, but one thing is needed, and Mary has chosen the good part, which shall not be taken from her." And so after reading this, I feel like the future teacher in me was like, let me compare them. Let me see how they're like. Let me see how they're different. And so really more of the contrast part to that. Martha was preparing, and she had Jesus in her home. And I know if I had Jesus in my home, I would be freaking out. I want everything to be perfect. I would want to make sure the food was just right. Where He sat was perfect. The house was spotless. Just like multiple things would have been crossing my mind. I would have been, as it says, Martha was distracted with much serving. And that would have been exactly me. I would have been, just like I said, making everything perfect. But Mary, on the other hand, she really wasn't helping her sister. And so I feel like siblings can understand. You might be the sibling that is always doing something, always doing whatever your mom or dad asks, but your other sibling just is doing nothing. And so I feel her frustration here, as in I feel like that would be me. I would be always the one doing something. But Mary did something that really sticks out, and she just sat. And she just was in the moment, something I'm very hard at. Have a very hard time doing is just being in the moment. And Mary was just in the moment with Jesus. Physically, Jesus was in her presence, and she was right there with Him. She was just sitting at His feet. And so as Martha was distracted, that brings me to the point of the preacher that I heard preach this message titled it, "We Live in a Martha's World." And it just hit home to me completely, so I just hope it does the same for you. We live in this world that is so focused on serving, which is great, and serving is good, and being the hands and feet of Christ, which is perfect, and something I really believe in. But I feel like as Christians, we just forget to sit at Jesus' feet. We just forget to take in His presence and take in what He's really, truly wanting to tell us. And so I think we learn a valuable lesson from Mary here, as she just sat at Jesus' feet and took Him in as He was physically, not worrying about anything else around her. She wasn't distracted. All the things going on in the world weren't distracting her. She was just in awe at the feet of Jesus. And so kind of to contradict that, like, I'm very big on serving, and I love being involved in things like camps and whatever, mission trips and things like that. Those are all important. And in James, I'm not going to flip there, but he talks about how, in James 2, verse 17 specifically talks about how faith without works is dead. And so, like, people see you can't physically see faith, and so how others see our faith is by our actions and what you do to proclaim Christ and be His hands and feet. So all that's good, but can somebody look up Matthew 14:23 for me? Somebody?
You said Matthew 14:23?
Yeah.
You want to read it?
Yeah.
After he had dismissed them, he went up on the mountain he was there alone?
So this is talking about Jesus. He found time to get away from everybody, get away from all the distraction, and be alone with God. And so it says he prayed. And there's multiple accounts. This is just one I picked, that Jesus separated himself and he talked to the Father. So he just sat at God's feet. And he listened to what he had to say, and he soaked up whatever God was wanting him to know at that time. And so I think that we focus on being like Christ. And so this is just one example of how Christ just sat at the feet of God, and how we should be like Christ and sit at his feet and just observe what he has to say to us. And so just kind of taking that, be in the moment, step back and see what God is trying to show you, whether that be in your Bible reading time, in your prayer, in your worship in your car, whatever you do to get away and just to sit at Jesus' feet. I really encourage you just to think about that aspect of your faith. Just how I relate to this is I feel like I'm one of those people like Martha, and I just am wanting to serve. If there's something I can sign up for, I'm signing up for it. And if there's something I need to do, I'm doing it because I feel like that's what I'm supposed to do. Sometimes we get caught up in serving and the fact that that's what we're supposed to do as Christians. Because if I do this, then Braden's going to see me do it, so he's going to think I'm a good Christian, or so-and-so's going to see me, and things like that. We just get caught up in that, and we neglect the relationship here because we're too worried about the relationship here towards others. And so you have to make sure that your relationship between you and God is where it needs to be, and that it is on track. Because if it's right, then you're going to be able to serve better. You're going to be able to know what God wants you to do, because you're actually in his word and you're listening to his voice, and he's telling you, instead of like I catch myself in a situation where I was trying to serve Jesus, but it wasn't because he told me to do it. It was just because I felt like I needed to do that because I was a Christian, like I mentioned that earlier. And so when I took a step back and realized, okay, I need to see what God's wanting me to do, he opened doors that he wanted for me instead of me making those doors for myself. And so I really gained a blessing from that, and just seeing what God wanted me to do when I got down and sat at his feet instead of worrying about the worldly things and what other people thought about me and what I was doing. And another point I have is that if we get tired of serving and we just kind of forget who we're serving. We forget that Jesus is who we're supposed to be serving. It becomes a thing for people to see. It becomes kind of like for me instead of for Jesus, and so that he gets the glory. And so when we look back, and Jesus even says, Mary has chosen the good part. And so he's just reiterating the fact that she's chose to sit at his feet, and that is good. And so I think we can just apply that by sometimes we just need to stop getting distracted and making everything right and perfect and serving, and sometimes just step back and sit at his feet. And so kind of like another application I heard to this was Francis Chan, if anybody's heard of him. He's a great speaker, preacher, and if you haven't listened to any of his sermons, YouTube him, he's good. But I heard this about 2 years ago, and it's never left me. So let's say Cam, you're going to be my example. If I said that I would give you $1,440 every day, and all you had to do was give me $20, would you do it? Would you ever forget to give me $20? More than likely, probably not. You would probably remember 20 because you would be getting 1,000. Exactly. And so God gives us 1,440 minutes every single day, but we cannot sit at his feet for 20 minutes. We neglect to sit at his feet for 20 minutes because we get caught up in the distractions like Martha. We get caught up in the busyness of serving, or maybe not even God-related things. We get caught up in our lives and how busy they are, and we just forget to stop and give him 20 minutes. And so he gives us all that time, and he gives us a breath every second, but we neglect to give him 20 minutes every day. So to sum it all up, if you didn't hear anything, listen now so you can know. Be intentional about your time with God. That's really what I think the main focus of this is that we just know that our time with God is important, and it needs to happen daily, whether that be you're walking to class and you're praying, whether that be you're sitting in your dorm and you're reading the Bible, whether you're worshiping in your car. There's a million different ways that, however is best for you, but give God that time daily. And so back to, I really believe that serving is important, but I don't think that we can serve correctly unless we have our relationship with God correct. And so if we're not listening to what He has to say to us, and we're not growing in our own faith, how are we to lead others and be the hands and feet of Christ if we don't really know anything that's going on? And so I just encourage you that in our Martha world, that you live like Mary occasionally, that you just put away the distractions and you focus on you and God, and you grow in your faith and constantly keep that relationship with Him just like you would any of your other friends. You would talk to them daily, you would learn about them, and we do the same with Christ. So that's all I have.